Okay, now we are recording so that we can upload this to YouTube. Woohoo! Later on. Okay, and 3, 2, 1, let's start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monster Monday for Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020. I'm your host, DM Gallibond. On this Memorial Day, we want to say a special thanks out there to all those who have given the ultimate sacrifice and the families of those who have lost their lives. Uh, they are true heroes among us. Remember all the folks who've worn the uniform to defend the country and, have served honorably. Uh, just always remember that if you don't like the policies of the people who send brothers and sisters and sons and daughters to war, then don't take it out on the soldiers. Go to the ballot box and make a change when it's time for an election. That's the way you deal with policies you don't like. Don't take it out on the troops. They have done nothing to deserve your anger and ire. All right, so today on Monster Monday, we are going to look at the Fresh Faced Recruit. This continues our series of looking at monsters from Magic the Gathering that I have reused, repurposed, reskinned for use in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, where my party is traveling through the various different planes associated with the Magic the Gathering game. Fresh First Recruit is also a monster out of the Ravnica set. Before we go any further, I want to go ahead and say a special thanks to Mo over at tabletopbellhop.com. He's the OG when it comes to everything tabletop games. Go over and look at his site. He has all kinds of board games, card games, all sorts of reviews, industry information, links to buy stuff, and a whole constellation, galaxy, if you will, of different kinds of media about games. Everything from podcasts to YouTube channels to streams, whatever. Okay, now let's get on and look at the Fresh Faced Recruit. This is from the Guild of Ravnica expansion for Magic the Gathering. It's a human soldier from the Boros Legion. And when the PCs in my Walker of Waterdeep campaign went to Ravnica as part of their ongoing mission, this was a monster that they met and fought in a training arena as part of their adventures. So this is just, this guy. He's a 2 mana cost, 2/1 card that you can play that basically gives you first strike, so that means it deals damage before it takes damage. As a member of the Boros Legion, Fresh Faced Recruit believes in the purpose of the Legion above all else. This is a quote out of the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, that the Legion humbly takes up steel against the corruption and lawlessness that gnaw at the soul of Ravnica. All right, and the type of creature, you'll notice in Magic, everything has a type, because there are certain spells or effects that will work on, like, let's say humans, or they'll work on soldiers, or they'll work on creatures. So these tags here give you information in the card game about what they work on. Now, in Dungeons and Dragons, you also have creature types, and creature types in Dungeons and Dragons confer a whole nother suite of features and things. And humanoids are the main peoples of the D&D world that most humanoid races make up the PC classes. So any class, I think without exception, any class that can become a PC in D&D is classified as humanoid. Even those that are kind of out there on the margins, like the centaurs and the warforged, I believe, are still classified as humanoids in the player's handbook and or I'm sorry, not the player's handbook, the monster manual and the other resources where they have been published for for PC classes. All right, the terrain that you'll find them in, Fresh-Faced Recruit, is urban. Ravnica as a plane, if you don't know much about it, it is a plane that's it's kind of like a planet-wide city. If you're familiar with the Star Wars franchise, you know the planet Coruscant, where the Imperial Senate or the Republic Senate or whatever, depending on the time frame, where that is located, where it's just one big huge city. Um, that covers the entire planet. That's basically Ravnica. There are parts that are outside the city in Ravnica, but anything that's outside the city is just wasteland. So it's either city or it's wasteland. And only the Gruul clans actually live out in the wasteland. Everybody else lives in the city. So um, 9 of the 10 guilds, and thus the vast majority of creatures you run into in Ravnica will be have urban as their default terrain. Okay, so flavor features, what I've been trying to do here is just take the flavor text off the card, since that can be unique for each of these monsters. And Tajik, who's um, one of the people in the Boros Legion, he says, hold on to your ideals. They'll be tested more than your armor or the edge of your blade. And that's directly off of the Fresh-Faced Recruit card. All right, so getting into using the Fresh-Faced Recruit in D&D, question I always like to answer is what makes this monster tick? Well, it's a CR3 monster, +8 to attacks. It gets 2 attacks per round. Armor class of 18 with plate mail, 42 hit points, D6 damage dice, and the stat block there. And the stat block I used to base the ability scores and some of the special features is the Axe of Mirabar Soldier, um, which is out of the D&D sourcebook. I believe that's out of um, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, but I might be wrong about that. So I also gave this card some synergy abilities with the other Boros Legion cards in the arena fight against the PCs. Uh, this card can benefit from the mentor ability of the other more powerful Boros enemies, and it also has abilities that require getting advantage on attacks. And we'll see those in the next couple of slides. Now, the in Magic the Gathering, some of the abilities that are conferred uh, by other cards can be to actually add +1/+1, which almost in essence, when you try to convert that to D&D, that you know would be like adding a whole nother level to the creature. And there's really not any kind of mechanic in 5e that does that. So instead of adding a whole nother level, what I would do is I would say that that translates to conferring advantage on attacks, so that it can roll 2d20s for every attack and take the highest one. So it gives it a little bit better chance to hit, but it doesn't actually make it a more powerful character by giving it, another level of abilities, if you will. So speaking of those attacks, the Fresh-Faced Recruit gets multiple attacks, 2 attacks with a great sword. And that greatsword is +8 to hit. Um, 1 square of reach, 5-foot reach, 2d6 +3 slashing damage, and it's a melee attack. And in my conversion algorithm, I use the monster's power to determine its number of attacks. So that's why it gets 2. So it's a power 2, toughness 1 monster. And the +8 is based on the fact that PCs have a high AC in the party, and the damage is relatively low because I want the players to be afraid of getting hit. But if they get swarmed by a bunch of enemies, I don't want them to get sliced to ribbons before they can do anything. And then going back to the challenge rating of the monster, CR3 is based on a combination of the casting cost of the card and the toughness of the card. So he said this is a 2/1 card, so 2 power, 1 toughness, and it costs 2 mana to cast it. 1 mana and then one that has to be either white or red. And so the 2 mana plus the 1 toughness gives you a challenge rating of 3. That's how I come up with that in doing my conversions. All right. So what are the special abilities of the Fresh-Faced Recruit? So it has damage immunity to thunder and radiant, and damage resistance to fire and cold. Also has nimble strike. So as a bonus action, Fresh-Faced Recruits can use the disengage action when it has advantage on its attacks. And then they combat agility. As a reaction, Fresh-Faced Recruit can use the dodge action when it has advantage on its attacks. So this way, the recruit has the ability to both disengage and dodge, making it a little bit harder for the enemy to pin it down and hit it. And that makes it a little bit more of a tougher enemy without really raising it another level, if you will. So the immunity and resistances in my campaign, that's based on the color of mana used to cast the creature. So white is keyed to cold and radiant damage, and that's somewhat arbitrary. It's just there's 6 different colors of mana in Magic the Gathering. Um, when I played a lot back in the 90s, there were 5 colors. You had white, green, red, blue, and black, and then you had colorless. But in the intervening years, they've eventually come up with actually a symbol for colorless mana. So now colorless mana actually is considered a color. And you'll see some cards that have this weird little symbol on it to indicate that it requires colorless mana. So I can't even, unless you have like artifacts that give you colorless mana. I don't even remember what else in the game generates colorless mana when you tap it. Because most things generate mana of a specific color. And then the Nimble Strike and Combat Agility take advantage of the Field Command ability, which is the one that gives you, which is the one that takes the place of the Mentor ability on the cards in Magic the Gathering. And then I was talking about the energy type red is keyed to fire and thunder damage. So when I convert a character, or when I convert a monster to D&D, I usually like to go through and look at the color, and I like to give it either immunity and or resistance to one of the damage types keyed to its color. Because just the power curve to me in Magic the Gathering seems like it should be a little bit above the power curve in D&D 5e. And so things that, a CR3 monster out of Magic the Gathering should be a little bit tougher than a CR3 monster um, out of the monster manual. You can use the same stat block, but then you just kind of tune the abilities up a little bit to make it a bit more of a challenging foe. All right, now if we look at Magic the Gathering and how this card plays in the actual game that it came from, I indicated that I haven't played Magic in a while. In fact, I started with the game very early in the I think probably it was back in 1993, in the same year that it came out. As I remember, my friends and I had been longtime D&D fans, and those were in those days D&D was still being made by TSR, and Wizards of the Coast came out with this Magic the Gathering, and we of course loved the art, and we loved the concept of playing, and we initially thought that Magic the Gathering was going to be something we could do when we didn't have time to play a D&D game. Like if everybody wants to get together and all we have is an hour, um, well, that's not really time to break out the dice and break out the books and sit down and start doing anything with a campaign. But we thought, oh, well, we can just play this card game. But then we started realizing, no, you just can't buy the cards and play them out of the box. You have to actually construct a deck, and if you want to try to construct a good deck, it takes a long time to start thinking about how all these cards work together. And, you'd spend like 4 or 5 hours trying to build a deck before you could actually play. And so I was just like, yeah, okay, fine. Um, I bought cards for a long time, and I played in some of the uh, in-store events, like especially the ones where you would just I guess they call it the draft, where they pass around unopened packs of cards, and everybody takes one as you open them, and you just build a deck from whatever you happen to get sitting there at the table. Uh, so I enjoy it, but I'm not very good at it. So when I talk about the monsters in Magic the Gathering, I don't try to go into how you would use them in strategy. I mainly go for more statistical or trivial information about the cards. So Fresh-Faced Recruit was released in 2018 in the Guilds of Ravnica set as an uncommon card. Artwork is by Anthony Palumbo. It's one of 143 creatures in the set, one of 117 cards requiring white or red mana, one of 66 cards costing 2 mana to cast, and one of 25 cards in the set bearing the Boros Legion guild mark. And Fresh-Faced Recruit is also one of 411 cards across all expansions to either have the words human or soldier as part of the subtype of the card. So, there you go. Just a little bit of trivia about the card from its native environment. So now, how did I use this in Walker of Waterdeep? I alluded to the fact that there was a training exercise consisting of monsters from the Boros Legion. So I had the Boros Challenger and the Blade Instructor and 3 of the fresh-faced recruits, and they were all under the command of a barging sergeant. And if you'll notice, the sergeant, the challenger, and the instructor all have this mentor ability. And so in my game, I changed that to an ability that they can point to an ally that is a lesser CR than they are, and they can say, give them a command, and then that ally gains advantage for their attacks that round. So Barging Sergeant, that costs 5 to cast and 2 to has a 2 toughness, so that's a CR7. Then the Challenger is 2 to cast and 3 toughness, so that's a 5 CR monster. And then Blade Instructor is 3 to cast and 1 toughness, so it's a CR4 monster. So between the 3 of them, they could either pump up all 3 of the fresh-faced recruits, or the sergeant could pump up the Challenger. The Challenger could pump up the Blade Instructor, and the Blade Instructor could pump up one of the recruits and give them advantage. So it was a nice little way that I could play with which creatures are getting advantage on their attacks each round, in a way that kind of always kept the party guessing about where those advantage attacks were coming from, because they weren't quite sure what was going on uh, using the field command. And it's like that's one of the things I enjoy about this is it gives me a chance to sort of play around with stuff and throw abilities at the players that they've never seen before and kind of make them think a little bit on their feet and then try to adapt to the battlefield. And the reason I can do that is because this group of players, the PCs they've designed are very potent, and tactically they're a strong group that understands how to use the other characters' abilities to their advantage when it's their turn in combat, and how to help set up each other um, uh, in a combat situation. So when you have the monsters doing the same thing, okay, now it causes the players to sort of react a little bit to what the monsters are doing instead of just being able to dictate um, the terms of the fight and how the fight is going to go. Um, and I think we have one person on the chat tonight. I'm not sure if we have any questions from the stream. Chat room, any questions on this particular monster or what we did? Okay, well, if not, I am going to go ahead and go into the wrap up. Go ahead and type a question if you have one while I'm doing the wrap up. I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday for Memorial Day. The other shows that I do here on this Twitch channel are Walker of Waterdeep on Sundays at 2:30, Dragon of Icespire. Actually, Dragon of Icespire Peak just wrapped up this Thursday, but Thursdays at 8 p.m. we will be starting a brand new campaign called Chronicles of the Sword Coast. So stay tuned and tune in on Thursday nights for that campaign. It's going to be largely the same cast that was in Dragon of Icespire Peak. And then there's all the information about Twitch, YouTube, Patreon. I also need to go ahead and get my Instagram up there as well. But you'll see the Instagram information down in the description on YouTube below this post when it gets posted to YouTube. I do want to say that I have started putting the backlog of the Walker of Waterdeep and the Dragon of Icespire Peak sessions up on the YouTube channel, and I'm putting those up first unedited. So you're getting the entire session from Twitch that I recorded. When I have time, I'll go back and I'll chop those up. But I kept thinking I was going to get to a point where I would be able to edit those into smaller things, and so much time has gone by. I said, okay, I just need to get them out there, and then I'll worry about trimming them down later. So I'll just put them up there for people that want to catch up with the story that way. All right, everyone. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Go ahead and follow, subscribe on Twitch. If you want to know about every time we go live and stream something, whether it's a game or whether it's the Monster Monday stream that I do, you can also you can also subscribe on the YouTube and click the bell there on the YouTube, and that will let you know every time we post a new video up there. This video will be going up to YouTube a little bit later tonight, and so that should be going out, and you should get notified about that on all of the social media channels as well. Okay, everybody. Well, I'm going to sign off, and I'll just remind everyone to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.